Trolls' origins. Who are they? Everything you need to know about them. Hi everyone, welcome back. I'm Terry, and this is Marvelous Videos. Trolls are fictitious beings in J.R.R. Tolkien's mythical land of Middle-earth, and they appear in video games and films based on his works. They're presented and shown as monstrously huge humanoids with enormous strength but limited intelligence. They must be underground before the break of dawn in The Hobbit, just like the Norse mythological dwarf Alvis, or they'll turn to stone, but they're able to see and roam outside during the daylight in the literature of The Lord of the Rings. Commentators have observed the many uses Tolkien makes of trolls, from humour in Sam Gamgee's poetry and the cockney voices and social etiquette of the lowly working-class trolls in the text of The Hobbit, to the horrific atmosphere in Moria when the heroes are forced to face darkness and horrors. They've also recently been introduced in the new TV show The Rings of Power. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Now, let's begin. How did the trolls come into existence? Trolls are a type of giant in Germanic mythology, along with Rysar, Thorsar, and Jotnar. These titles are interchangeably applied to gigantic, monstrous creatures, sometimes as synonyms. The concept that such creatures must be underground before daylight may be traced back to the Norse mythology, in particular a collection of poems named Elder Edda, wherein the Alvismal, the powerful deity Thor, keeps the dwarf Alvis, who is not a troll, chatting until dawn and then turns him to stone. Tolkien scholar Tom Shippey writes that the audience for The Hobbit in 1937 was acquainted with trolls in fairy tale compilations such as Grimm's and Asbjornsen, and also Moe's Norwegian folktales. Hence, Tolkien's use of beasts in various kinds, trolls, orcs, and a Balrog in Moria that made that trip a descent into hell. Trolls first appeared in English according to Atterbury in Asbjornsen and Moe's 1841 compilation of traditional Norwegian stories, Norsk Eventyr, but were quickly followed by Scandinavian reinterpretations that included reinvented trolls. Trolls evolved from harsh Norse ogres to much more sympathetic contemporary humanoids as a result. To many, Tolkien's trolls are primarily based on the ogre archetype, but with two major incarnations: old trolls, which are creatures of dumb and lumpish nature, unable to talk, in Tolkien's words, and the wicked giants of courage and strength produced by Sauron using, quote, enough intellect to pose a serious menace. Edward Risdon, a scholar of English, is of the opinion that Tolkien's older trolls appear to be far more threatening than those in The Hobbit, losing the moral capacity to relent as well. He notes that in Norse myths and legends, trolls are ordinarily female and commonly associated with magic, whereas in the Norse sagas, trolls were physically powerful and superhuman during battle. According to Christina Fawcett, an English historian, Tolkien combines themes from different times so that his writing and his monsters may take on varied traits, ranging from funny to monstrous. His hill trolls, although certainly dangerous, are essentially comedic and slow-witted. When Gandalf outsmarts them, however, these very same trolls are viewed as grotesque, a warning against wickedness, trapped eternally in stone for their avarice and rage. Nonetheless, Fawcett warns that Tolkien selectively employs tradition, transferring the most favourable characteristics of Norse trolls, such as wealth and generosity, to hobbits. Trolls were created by Melkor prior to the First Age. They were extremely powerful, but when exposed to sunlight they turned to stone. Many trolls were killed during the Battle of Wrath, but a few of them escaped and joined the troops of Sauron, the Dark Lord, and Melkor's last remaining servant. The trolls' actual origins are unclear, although Treebeard theorizes that they were created in mockery of the Ents, similar to how orcs were a warped imitation of elves. Trolls were some of Sauron's most fearsome fighters throughout the Second and Third Ages. Sauron later also made the Oligai, who were smarter than all the previous troll varieties. While most trolls could not withstand sunlight without hardening to become stone, the Oligai appear to be able to, and to the same degree as orcs. This trait was referenced in The Return of the King as rendering them particularly deadly. Trolls, more crafty than average and armed with deadly weapons, were said to be roaming the Shire Shire in the seasons leading up to the Battle of the Ring. Trolls were known to talk with thick Cockney voices during Bilbo's expedition to the Lonely Mountain, notably 3 mountain trolls who had lived on the Eton Moors and travelled down to the Troll Shores. When they were exposed to sunlight, they turned to stone, because the stone is what trolls were essentially made up of, according to The Hobbit. They liked to consume everything they could manage to get their fingers on. Trolls in The Hobbit, while dangerous, serve as a humorous element. Bert, Tom and William, or Bill Huggins were their names, and there was only one of them with a given surname. Frodo and also the Fellowship faced cave trolls as numerous orcs in Moria at the time of the War of the Ring. Boromir's sword also recoiled from a troll's scaly skin. However, when things appeared to be in danger, the trolls fled due to the coming of the Balrog, or Durin's Bane. Sauron employed Oligai during the Battle of Gondor and the fight at the Pelennor Fields. Peregrine Took, a hobbit, slaughtered a big Oligai troll using his barrow blade during the ensuing fight at the Black Gate. During the conflict, the Black Gate crashed into ruin as a consequence of the destruction of the One Ring. The majority of the trolls involved during the fight were slaughtered, and the rest are said to have fled.
Well, that's lovely, that is. A floater. Oh, might improve the flavour.
Some unique characteristics that define the trolls. Trolls were powerful and ferocious, but typically also very stupid. Some have been reported as having the intelligence to speak, while others seem to be as illogical as animals. One of the greatest weaknesses of certain trolls was the fact that they hardened to stone when exposed to sunlight. Their hide was as tough as stone and nearly impenetrable to physical attacks. They are said to have been formed by Melkor, however it's unclear how. Trolls, according to the Ent Treebeard, were formed in mocking of Ents in the same way orcs seem to be of elves, albeit not exclusively from English ancestry. They might, however, be based on some other race from the land of Middle-earth, because neither Sauron nor Morgoth has the power to access the secret fire or the flame imperishable, and so cannot create anything, only modify what already exists. In The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, there's a mention of the fact that sunshine would return the trolls the stone form from which they were created. They appear to enjoy eating flesh and will consume practically any creature or even person they happen to encounter. They also have awful manners. During the Beleriand battles, Gothmog, who was the ruler of Balrogs, used to have a troll bodyguard. While commanding his soldiers in a final effort to safeguard Turgon's escape and the ongoing concealment of the realm of Gondolin, the mighty warrior Húrin fought the trolls and, despite Morgoth's stern instructions to have Húrin caught alive, he succeeded in killing many of Morgoth's evil troll troops. Their supposedly corrosive blood, however, destroyed his axe, enabling orcs to crowd over him and tie him, so concluding the Nirnaeth Arnoediad, also known as the Battle of Unnumbered Tears, in which Morgoth prevailed against the united forces of men, dwarves and elves. During the fight of the Pelennor Fields, there is an allusion to men-like half-trolls, also known as trollmen, but it's uncertain whether these men truly had some trollish ancestral roots or were simply compared to trolls. For a few readers, the first explanation is backed by the similar and exchangeable terms orcmen and also the term half-orcs, referring to Saruman crossbreeds. Various types of trolls explored. Cave trolls. The cave trolls are a race of gigantic and grotesque trolls that worshipped Sauron and were located in caverns and gloomy places. They are known from a confrontation with the Fellowship of the Ring when they travelled through Moria, but they were apparently found somewhere else in Middle-earth as well. These trolls, together with orcs and maybe other animals, were initially transported to Moria by Sauron to inhabit the area some 500 years prior to the War of the Ring. Moria's cave trolls were enormous in stature, with dark green scaled skin and flat feet that had no toes. The reality that Gandalf recognized the monster he confronted in Moria as a cave troll clearly implies that the same appearance was matched by other creatures of the kind. Cave trolls are extraordinarily enormous humanoid monsters modeled on mythical ogres and trolls that feature as minor villains in both the film and book series of The Lord of the Rings. There are several cave trolls in the book edition of The Fellowship of the Ring. The first cave troll is attacked by Frodo, who stabs its foot. However, the troll isn't really killed. These trolls are characterized as having long, extended arms, dark green scales, and toeless feet. Soon after, two additional cave trolls push two enormous rocks together to make a bridge across which the Balrog may travel. In Peter Jackson's 2001 film adaptation, decapitation, we see one cave troll which is slain by the Fellowship warriors, who pierce and hack at it in vain with no progress until Legolas eliminates it with an arrow. The arrow penetrates the top of its jaw and travels right through the humongous troll's brain, exiting through the back of its skull after being lodged in the troll's massive head. The cave trolls are computer generated in Peter Jackson's film. Randall William Cook wore a motion capture outfit to perform its motions. This type of troll also possesses nostrils that are higher than the distance between their eyes, giving their nose the appearance of a third eye. Hill trolls. Hill trolls were a kind of troll that had been closely linked to cave trolls and mountain trolls in Middle-earth. Hill trolls were reported to have lived in the Coldfells, which were at the north of Rivendell, where at least two of their kind murdered Arador, the 14th chieftain of the Dunedain and ancestor of Aragorn II Elessar. Later, a company of Gorgoroth hill trolls took part in the fight at the Black Gate, rushing the column of Gondorian troops and slaughtering many of them, including Beregond. Peregrine Took had been able to eliminate one of the evil trolls, but the beast swooped down on him and knocked him out. Hill trolls were reported to be taller and wider than men, as were all types of trolls, and their hide could best be described as a tight-fitting mesh studded with horny scales. Hill trolls were also well known for biting down on those they tossed around. At least a few of these trolls, particularly those who battled for Sauron when at the Black Gate, carried massive circular black bucklers and also wielded enormous hammers. Hill trolls were a type of troll that had specifically been adapted to dwell in the hills and the dark and swampy moorland. In the War of the Morannon, Sauron unleashed a regiment of these beasts from the Morannon, and they were a part of his army at the time. They resembled humans but were bigger and appeared to be encased in rough scales. They were ferocious and cruel, roaring like monsters as they surged into combat and slayed their foes with massive hammers. Oligai. The Oligai were actually an extremely advanced kind of troll who came into being in Middle-earth in the latter days of the Battle of the Ring under Sauron's service. The Lord of the Rings does not mention the Oligai by their name specifically. The moniker appears exclusively in the appendix. Sauron created them in the latter parts of the Third Age, possibly for the same reason Saruman created the Uruk-hai, to make them enhanced and also make them more powerful and less weak to sunlight. They mostly resided in Mordor and the southern parts of Mirkwood. They are, although, mentioned in the fight at the Black Gate, as Pippin rescues his companion Beregond from a member of this kind. The Oligai are shown to be much larger than a man, clad in spiny and sharp scales, wielding dangerous warhammers, massive swords, or studded heavy maces, and even bucklers, and possessing sharp claws and, on rare occasions, even tusks. It's stated that all Oligai were destroyed following the Battle of the Ring. Oligai was a term that was originally coined in black speech that just meant troll folk. This particular breed of troll seldom talked and never used any dialect other than Mordor's black tongue. Oligai did not have normal troll weaknesses. They were highly intelligent and, unlike their brethren, could travel under the sun. As a result, some saw them as Uruk-hai-like orcs, who were descendants of the trolls. It's likely they only lived because they were powered by Sauron's wicked intent, and this strengthened them. Sauron developed them from an unknown origin. However, it's been believed that they are corruptions of certain primordial human sorts. They first made an appearance in southern parts of Mirkwood and on Mordor's mountainous edges. The initial name for these monsters in the fourth version of the F appendix was Horghai, which was modified to Olghai before eventually being finalized as Ologhai in the final published book. Mountain trolls. Mountain trolls were a massive kind of troll that were linked to hill trolls and cave trolls. They were staunch allies of the orcs. Mountain trolls, like other trolls, arose from Morgoth's warping and interbreeding of many other beasts of the realm and subsequently became Sauron's slaves and a part of his troops. Mountain trolls might be encountered in the hills and mountains of the land of Middle-earth. During the fight of the Pelennor Fields, their kind assisted with the positioning of the giant battering ram, Grond, with which they handled and smashed the massive doors of Minas Tirith. Adults of the species were also spotted unlocking the doors of the Black Gate. Mountain trolls had brownish skin and were much bigger than hill trolls. They were enormous and seldom went out of their mountain habitats. They were frequently used as guards and enforcers by orcs due to their frightening reputation. Morgoth's realms of Angband and Utumno were presumably guarded by mountain trolls. Mountain trolls were also formidable combatants. These trolls were more intelligent than cave trolls, and their ability to carry enormous things and utilize them as weaponry made them extremely lethal. They were expected to be capable of performing other demanding activities as well. Due to the tough and harsh environment of their habitat, they were tougher than cave trolls.
What a load of rubbish! I've eaten plenty with their skins on.
Stone Trolls. Stone Trolls were a kind of troll who also worked for Sauron. Little is known about these mysterious and reportedly soulless beings, except that they lived in the Westlands in Middle-earth and spoke a debased variant of the common speech. It's probable that they were not actually even real living beings, but rather Melkor's counterfeits, and that when exposed to the rays of the sun, they would revert to their stone copies. Tom, Bert and Bill, the trolls seen by Bilbo Baggins and all his colleagues on their expedition to Erebor, were most likely of this type, given the fact that they spoke Westron. Sam Gamgee wrote the hilarious poem called The Stone Troll in the year TA 3018 about Tom seeing an ancient troll who was chewing on Tim's bones. The three trolls seek to capture and transport the dwarves in their sacks. This is similar to the moment in Beowulf, in which Grendel carries his human victim in a glove. Stone trolls were generally stupid and irritable. Almost all the stone trolls had first names, while a few, such as William Higgins, even had last names. Stone trolls ate wild poultry, wild boars and pigs, hobbits, dwarves, and fish if they ever could actually catch them. They hunted by following or attacking the animals and then striking them with a tool such as a club or an axe. Stone trolls often resided in caverns or enormous tunnels that ran several yards deep underground, where they could possibly avoid sunlight during the day. They slept on mattresses constructed of grasses, ferns and leaves or animal skins. These trolls were totally made up of stone and possessed no souls at all. When they died, they returned to become one with the mountains. Half-trolls. Half-troll was a phrase used to describe the visage of the residents of Far Harad, the Far Haradrim, who battled at Sauron at the fight of the Pelennor Fields. Later in the fight, the Knights of Dol Amroth claimed to have pushed before them trollmen as well as Variags and Orcs. Because there is no other documented reference to this word in J.R.R. Tolkien's books, it's unknown whether half-trolls ever existed in Arda, even as myth. If half-trolls existed, whether their origins were comparable to those of half-orcs is unknown, and is a topic of discussion and speculation. As Christopher Tolkien has said, the Theorex Saga, a 13th century text that inspired the legend of Sigurd and Gudrun, defines a character who is the child of a lady and an incubus to be troll-like and also has all-over dark skin with black hair and a black beard. This seems to be the inspiration for the creation of this particular species. These hideous hybrids of humans and trolls were frequently used as slaves by the Dark Powers. Saruman prominently employed this race of trolls as enforcers and speakers, despite the fact that they were mainly dim-witted and were solely utilized as wardens. These creatures might have served as Isengard's doorkeepers.
My grog.
Sorry.
Some interesting theories regarding how trolls can reproduce. Trolls have two apparent sexes, yet they reproduce asexually. Troll females have breasts but do not breastfeed infants. Troll women also have hips like human women, but they do not bear children. Troll males have penises, but their reproduction does not have to be through penetration. Adult trolls look like people, while infant trolls look like insect-like grubs, and higher, more intelligent trolls are larger in stature. Trolls are a genetic chimera created by a symbiotic relationship between a human-like species and numerous Middle-earth monsters. The troll's reproductive process was similar to that of Earth monotremes, such as the duck-billed platypus. Physical reproduction and egg-laying. Newly hatched trolls look more like newborns than grubs. Trolls were plagued by a parasitic bug that contaminated their eggs. This parasite, like Earth insects, experienced metamorphosis, having multiple different body stages. The connection between insects and trolls evolved over time, from parasitoidism, in which the infected egg is devoured by the insect, to parasitism, in which both the troll and the bug grub emerge from the same egg, and via the emergence of resilience in the troll fetus. Simultaneously, one phase of the insect managed to evolve into a sexually transmitted parasite on fully grown trolls, comparable to pubic lice in human beings, but with one critical distinction. The parasite produces hormones in the affected troll's body, causing significant negative feelings towards a troll to be felt as sexual desire. Early trolls had internal fertilization, with females laying eggs that hatch into grub-like infants that were breastfed. Female trolls, on the other hand, disliked getting pregnant since it was dangerous to their health. Trolls began carefully breeding other monsters to act as surrogate mothers in order to free female trolls from the discomfort and dangers of pregnancy. At this time, troll sexes were virtually extinct. After all, both sexes could procreate by transferring their genetic traits to some other beast, and after many cycles of this, the capacity of female trolls to get pregnant was discarded as it was dangerous.
Fools! The dawn will take you all! Who's that?
Direct sunlight makes them vulnerable. Trolls are said to turn to rock when exposed to sunlight, according to popular mythology and old wives' tales. Trolls are primordial, ape-like animals that can grow to enormous sizes. They're nocturnal and subterranean creatures which despise the sun. They may wander around on the open surface at night, but they must seek cover beneath bridges or in caves during the day so that they stay away from sunlight. Their main weakness is exposure to direct sunshine. These trolls are physiologically immortal and will continue to grow larger for as long as they live. The trolls continue to grow and expand until they can no longer support their own weight or can no longer hide from the sunshine. When trolls die in the sun, their skin calcifies and they turn into rock. It's a long and agonizing death. Their skin hardens from the outside in until they ultimately shatter apart. The biggest trolls may grow into mountains. There are many weird rock formations left behind by deceased trolls in various nooks and corners of Middle-earth. It's conceivable that newborn trolls are resistant to light and can work throughout the day, but then as they age, this resistance fades. Young trolls are conceived in vast numbers, but only a small percentage of them grow to adulthood. The epidermis of the troll's skin has a collection of proteins that bond to one another and solidify when exposed to specific wavelengths, similar to dental composite polymers. As a result, they will not become genuine rocks, chemically speaking. Their skin then hardens into a highly solid organic substance with qualities similar to most types of rock. When exposed to sunshine, the skin's proteins might break loose rather than actually harden. They enter the bloodstream and harden in other organs as well as on the skin itself. But many wonder, if trolls transformed to stone in the sunlight, how come there were trolls during the attack on Minas Tirith? This only happened due to Sauron's ability to produce a smoky cloud formation that entirely obscured the sun. This is stated multiple times throughout the novel. Snow Troll was seen in the Rings of Power. Helm Hammerhand was referred to as a snow troll during his solo attacks against the Dunlendings in the literature written by Tolkien during the long winter of the year TA 2758 and also 2759. Helm's actions were long remembered by the people residing in Dunland, and people who heard about them were always left with terror and fear in their hearts. There's no other documented reference to this word in Tolkien's works, therefore it's unknown whether snow trolls ever existed in Arda, even as myth. Snow trolls, as per Amazon Prime's X-ray feature, which helps people find out facts and trivia about the show they're watching, were a kind of troll that had evolved to live in the harsh and freezing climes of the Northern Realms. In the opening episode, Galadriel's party is assaulted by a snow troll that lives within the stronghold that the troops were exploring. Snow trolls are enormous, grey or white coloured, and are an uncommon species of trolls who live in Middle-earth's northernmost areas. When exposed to sunlight, they transform into pillars of frozen waste. Snow trolls are referenced just once in Tolkien's writings in connection to Helm Hammerhand following his opponents, like a snow troll, during his sorties while against the Dunlendings during the long winter. Trolls like this may have dwelled in the Coldfells in the westernmost parts of Eriador. Galadriel and her entourage are assaulted by a snow troll while visiting an abandoned Morgoth castle in the wasteland of Forodwaith in the opening part of the new Amazon TV show The Rings of Power. Before Galadriel can slay it, the beast injures a number of the elves. Trolls as seen in Peter Jackson's trilogy and the Hobbit trilogy. Trolls in the Rankin Bass animated films are depicted as giant sort of mammalian-like humanoids with big noses and tusks, but Toms have seemingly been snapped off inside his mouth. Aside from Tom, William and Bert, numerous trolls in armor are seen as melee combatants and controllers of the assault ram named Grond during the Battle of Gondor in the movie The Return of the King. In its description of the interaction with the troll inside the chamber, Ralph Bakshi's animated rendition from the year 1978 follows the novel quite closely. Nevertheless, the troll does indeed have toes here. It appears to be a human-like reptile roughly 9 feet tall based on what is visible through the entrance. The troll's foot was characterized by Tolkien as toeless and flat. There aren't any more trolls. There's also only one cave troll in Peter Jackson's 2001 film The Fellowship of the Ring. Boromir is the first to notice it. It subsequently surges through the open entryways and ruins most of the chamber, which includes Balin's tomb, throughout the ensuing battle. It stabs Frodo, but his mithril shirt saves him. In the original text, it's an Uruk troll captain who spears him. It's slain by the Fellowship members despite putting up a fair fight, knight, who lance and cut at it until Legolas kills it with an arrow. The arrow enters its mouth through the soft palate and travels straight into its brain, erupting from the crown of its skull after being trapped in the thick head. It's been noticed that in Jackson's rendition, light from a glass window falls on Balin's grave, which the troll walks into. This should have transformed it to stone, although the light may have come from the moon in the early morning hours. Battle trolls are depicted in The Two Towers and The Return of the King, donning armor and jagged clubs alluded to in the appendices. They're shown during the War of Gondor as key shock soldiers invading Minas Tirith after Grond had breached the gate. At least one escaped carrying a sledgehammer instead of a club and was observed attempting to smash down a barrier. Other trolls were used by Sauron's army to move extraordinarily massive structures like siege towers and gates, occasionally chaining them. The Moria cave troll had a leash of dangling chain, implying it was a previous labourer, yet this particular example was unruly enough to assault some of its own companions in the fight, possibly indicating the need for others to restrain it. During the time of the Battle of the Black Gate, Aragorn confronts an Oligai. The whole top body of this Olog is armed with black plate armor. Although most trolls in movies hold clubs, this one held a sword in addition to a mace, which was only briefly glimpsed. When the ring was shattered, it escaped, and it was last seen rushing through Sauron's troops before the ground fell beneath them. Stone trolls named Tom, William and Bert are encountered by Bilbo, Killy and Filly after stealing some of the dwarf's ponies in the movie The Hobbit: An Unexpected Journey. Killy and Filly remain behind, while Bilbo attempts to take a sword from the trolls in order to release the ponies. When Bilbo is unintentionally captured by the trolls, their dwarven allies rush them and a minor struggle ensues as Bilbo attempts to release the ponies. Bilbo, on the other hand, is apprehended, and after the trolls attempt to tear Bilbo up, the dwarves submit and are placed in sacks. Half of the dwarves are placed on a spit to be grilled and cooked over a fire, but the rest of the dwarves, including Bilbo and Thorin, are left in their bags on the ground. Bilbo notices Gandalf creeping around and begins discussing methods to cook the dwarves with the trolls in order to stall for time. As Tom tries to eat Bombur uncooked and raw, Bilbo hastily declares that the dwarves are plagued with intestinal parasites in an attempt to deter the trolls from devouring them, but they are not easily misled, especially William. Then Gandalf enters, and as all the trolls wonder who he actually is and if he may be eaten, the wizard cracks a boulder using his staff that had been sheltering the wicked trolls from the rising sun, turning them to solid stone. Gandalf and Thorin think that the trolls have not travelled this far to the south from their home in the Etten Moors ever since the Second Age, when the lands were controlled by a darker force. Azog's orc army is boosted by a few dozen huge Goldor Oligai in Peter Jackson's 2014 movie The Battle of the Five Armies. Some of them are utilised as siege animals with catapults or by using similar equipment, while the rest of them are used solely as combat trolls with partial plate armor and brutal weapons like clubs, maces and scythed gauntlets. They are seen battling the combined armies of elves, dwarfs and lakemen across both the wide plains of Erebor and the shattered streets of Dale in the struggle for the Lonely Mountain. The majority of these trolls are between 25 to 30 feet tall, with a handful standing between 9 and 12 feet tall. During the final stages of the combat, Legolas kills a gigantic truncated albino Oligai called Stumpy by the creators. He initially appears in the extended version of the film in an earlier sequence where he is hijacked by Bofur to battle against all the Goldor orcs and the rest of the war trolls. Conclusion. According to critic Gregory Hartley, while Tolkien's trolls in The Hobbit resembled those of Norse mythology, archetypal, stereotypical, basking in unexamined sentience, in the Silmarillion as well as The Lord of the Rings, Tolkien decided to undertake the tough challenge of melding fairy tales with epic, which was then bonded with the Christian mythos. Characters and monsters began to operate on many registers. The light-hearted casualness of The Hobbit's Cockney accent-speaking trolls gave way to the very bestial trolls of the later novels. Hartley remarks that Tolkien's redaction effort for his legendarium was motivated by the manner in which he wrote The Hobbit, and that the ensuing rich, weird roles that trolls and the rest of monsters play in Middle-earth wouldn't even have existed without it. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one. Thanks for watching and see you next time.